Oh yeah, I know. Every time.
Boom. It's every time. It really, like, I don't know. My brain just keeps it rolling, and you can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Honestly, welcome.
I hope our viewers love it just as much as we do too.
Oh yeah, honestly, yeah. Should we get new theme music? We won't listen to you because we love it. But should we? Welcome back to GPS Live for the week of February 17th, 2023. My name is Tristan Morris.
And I am Jonathan Singer.
And we are here to discuss cybersecurity news that we found and talk to y'all. If you are joining us live, thank you so much. We love having you guys here. We are checking the comments regularly, so we will talk to you if you want to talk to us. And if you're watching this on demand, thank you so much for giving us some of your time after the fact. Give us a quick 30 minutes just to run down some cybersecurity news that we found interesting. Jonathan, how have you been? Oh, well, first, let me apologize for last week. We were supposed to run a recording of what Jonathan and I had done at our company kickoff. We had interviewed some folks. We had discussed some news stories with them. It was great. It was a fun time. And then we ran into technical issues with it. So the recordings got all goofed up. The audio was off. We weren't able to salvage that the way that we wanted to. So we weren't able to run it last week. So we apologize for that. Lessons learned. Next year, we will have much better recording equipment with us. That's for sure. But Jonathan, how have you been for the last couple weeks, bud?
Oh man, last week, right? Our corporate kickoff was kind of a big deal, especially for all the new folks. Over here at GuidePoint, we're like growing like crazy. So there's a lot of new faces and a lot of great partners out there. And so I know a lot of our partners watch this show, and we love your support and we love hearing from you. So please keep it up and provide us as much positive feedback as possible. But no, man, it's been great. It's good to be home and feeling good. Excited to keep these shows going.
Yeah, super excited. So we've got some interesting stories this week, but before we dive into them, what we do have to say is that the views and opinions that Jonathan and I express are our own. They do not necessarily reflect the official views of GuidePoint Security. We're just two dudes talking about stuff, and we happened to stumble into hitting a go live button while we did it. So, yeah, man, we've got some fun stories this week. We actually have 4, and so let's jump into the first one. First and foremost, City of Oakland, California, has declared a state of emergency after a ransomware attack. It's pretty huge. That's what drew me to this one was the fact that this was a large scale enough attack against a government infrastructure that they had to declare a state of emergency over it. Multiple municipal operations have been taken offline due to this. But it seems the other thing that was that caught my eye in it is that the I'm trying to look for the exact quote in the article, which comes to us from Gizmodo. But one of the things that caught my eye about it is that it did not impact things like the 911 infrastructure, which seems to me like it was almost a calculated, thought out move by whoever ran the ransomware, right? To say like, hey, let's leave like super vital services accessible. Which is something that we've been seeing a lot with larger ransomware groups and ransomware as a service operations, saying, "Hey, do not use our ransomware, our software, but do not use our ransomware against vital life-saving organizations."
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of pivot off that, yes, there was a recent story about a children's hospital, for instance, that was hit with ransomware. And once the attackers realized really who the target was, because oftentimes, right, they're throwing out a wide net to see who bites. And it's not necessarily always, point and click focused on a particular target. It just so happened that they were the victim this time. Once they realized it was a children's hospital, they immediately said, you know what? You're off the hook. We'll just kind of walk away from this one and try to pretend it didn't happen. And so like you said, yeah, non-emergency systems are exactly what's impacted. In fact, they went on to say officially from the city of Oakland that the systems include the ability to collect payments, process reports, issue permits, and licenses. So it sounds to me like nobody's going to be paying their parking tickets. Nobody's going to be getting their construction permits, or anybody issuing contractor licenses. It sounds like that's a bit of a struggle right now. In fact, it even went further to the point that the city has kind of acknowledged that some of these particular teams or departments are simply just offline at this point. They have even closed down some buildings, and this is really staggering to see. Almost something like a digital attack turn into a kinetic effect out here in the real world, where people are just not going into work at this point, and the fallout is not just the government or municipality itself, but all of the people in the community that depend on it are being affected by this.
Yeah, and it would be amusing if this was actually just an attempt by someone to get out of paying their parking
tickets. Yeah.
Like, what a response. How many parking tickets do you need to rack up before it's cheaper to license some
this isn't like college where you DDoS the grading server because you didn't turn your homework in on time. The kids don't do that. I'm just saying.
None of us have done this. What are you talking about? But no, you did mention the I want to say it was Lockbit. I want to say.
Well, they haven't attributed, or at least this particular article from Gizmodo does state that they haven't attributed. And also, furthermore, they, at least from their public-facing statement, make it clear that they do plan to restore from backups. They say they're frivolously, right? I guess that's more of a synonym, but they're asking for the patience and understanding that they are planning to restore impacted systems as quickly and as securely as possible. So that's their take, right?
Yeah. So this one hasn't been attributed. What I was going to say was I believe it. I want to say it was Lockbit that was the hospital attack that you were referencing.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was, and I believe what was notable about that one as well was that it was an affiliate of theirs that attacked the hospital, which was in like direct contradiction to what Lockbit says you're allowed to do with their ransomware, and so they also axed that affiliate.
What a day and age when ransomware has rules in terms of engagement.
Right. It's very interesting to kind of see this like code, this like pirate's code almost that's emerging around this. But attacks against municipalities and cities have been becoming increasingly common. Right. They are it is a target that you're guaranteed to be hitting kind of vital services. Cities need to be up and running, and when you look at the potential cost to the city of being offline for several days, right? You attack a large enough city, the amount of revenue that you're basically taking offline for the city when you take out payment portals, when you shut down basic services. I mean, that's a juicy target for an attacker to go after, because it's very likely that you can do some pretty easy math to say like, okay, if I ask for this ransom, it's going to be cheaper than if it takes them 5 days to get back up and running.
Yeah, and similarly, right? The article does point out that Baltimore also, was hit a couple of years ago, and that's also, that's a very large city too, and their spend was close to $20 million just to recover from their ransomware hit, right, back in 2019. And
then immediately the next year, the school system got taken down by
right? Like, go here, go there. In fact, furthermore, Oakland itself, right, isn't necessarily a stranger to having ransomware in its vicinity. Just another city, only about 80 miles away, was also hit this same week, right? There seems to just be this rampant flow of cities being kind of fallen victim to a lot of this stuff right now.
Yep. And I'm doing the dangerous internet thing and diving into the comments on Gizmodo and looking at some of these.
Oh, oh no.
Yeah, not great. I wonder how many of these people, actually are practicing cybersecurity or just kind of armchair warriors. But it's pointed out by one of the commenters here. Like, we've been practicing similar scenarios forever. It's because it is not a how or if thing on whether this happens. It's when. And so, like, even if all your security measures are up to snuff, someone is going to click the wrong email, someone is going to answer the wrong phone call and push the wrong button. And they do. Another commenter does mention, though, it's one of the things to start thinking about from a security perspective. This may not apply necessarily to a huge organization or to like a company organization, but like if you are a municipal government or something like that, like one of the commenters points out, why is your library not segmented from the rest of your infrastructure and resources? Why is someone able to attack something like your library, or which we don't know if that's how this got in, but why can someone get access to the payment portal for the entire city? Why is there not segmentation across these different groups that need to collect these? We recognize that it is a simplicity thing, but from a security perspective, if you're not practicing proper network segmentation and you're joining the wrong things together, that's how you wind up with an entire city being taken offline.
Look, a lot of these places are running on a shoestring budget. We see it all the time where, it's decades old systems that have been kind of patchwork together over time. A lot of, maybe turnover, individuals kind of learning on the job, whatever it may be, right? They built it to where it is today, somewhat functional. It has since collapsed under an attack, but that kind of gives us like a really interesting pivot to our next story, which happens to be coming to us from the Hacker News. And here, my segue is that talking about modular infrastructure. Well, what about modular games? And I want you to actually kick this one off because you were very passionate about it. I don't play a whole lot of games these days, but I'd love to hear where your DOTA play comes from.
Yeah, so I don't play DOTA anymore, which, if you're not familiar, if you're a viewer and you're not familiar with it, DOTA is Defense of the Ancients. It was in the past, it was just a Warcraft mod, so the very popular games Warcraft. And it's what's called a MOBA, so it's a battle arena kind of game. You've got multiple people, and you're all controlling a different character, and you're trying to take over the other player's territory, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long-standing kind of like free mod. I played a lot of this when I was deployed. One of my buddies had DOTA on a hard drive, and we would pass it around, and we all installed it, and then we would just do local, like we would LAN together in our rooms and play DOTA. So DOTA 2 is the official release of that, and this story itself is that someone created malicious game modes. So it's a modular system, so you can download new modes that people have created for the game from the Steam store. And so someone created malicious Dota 2 game modes, basically exploiting the fact that there was a flaw in the V8 JavaScript that Dota 2 is built on, that allowed them to, once you installed this game mode, it gave them backdoor access to your system. Which is insane.
I was trying to extrapolate here and break down what was going on. So the game, when executing, has this JavaScript V8 engine operating with it, and it allows for modules to be brought in, like these extra game modes, these extra plugins to affect the way the game can be played or rendered. And so on the Steam marketplace, malicious actors uploaded a whole bunch of backdoor game modes that, when downloaded and running in that JavaScript V8 engine of the game, open up remote access. And furthermore, again, there seems to be absolutely no isolation here when it comes to the app and its execution. This engine has full access to the system.
Yeah, it's not sandboxing Java at all, and that V8 JavaScript. It's just running openly. And when I first saw this, right, like my first reaction to the headline was, did someone actually like maliciously do this, or is this just the result of like someone who is new at building mods and they ticked the wrong box and they just like series of unfortunate events, they wound up accidentally building a bunch of backdoors into their stuff. But then as I started to read through this, it's really interesting the ways that these were uploaded to the Steam store under names like test add-on, please ignore. Guaranteed for someone's gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna play around with that. Yeah, I'll download it. Custom brawl, overthrow times 10 experience. Like these are just like custom built almost to like hook into a gamer's brain and be like, yes, I'm going to play around with this. It's probably garbage, but I want to try it out. So there were multiples that were uploaded, but the same user also uploaded versions of the game or game modes that didn't have the backdoor. Which indicates that yes, they knew what they were doing when they put these in there. So this how does this apply to actual organizational cybersecurity?
Yeah.
Right?
Where are you going with all of this, Tristan?
One more thing. Basically what this comes down to for me is, one, we've talked about this a billion times before, it feels like, but bring your own device policies, right? If you are allowing people to do this and they are also using a home device that they are playing games on or they are accessing these other systems on, you have to be aware of exactly what it is that people are doing. You have to have acceptable use policies in for these devices, or creating segmented profiles for people to kind of like boot into. You have to know exactly how you're doing that. But a game like Dota is not the only thing that is a modular piece of software. Right. I mean, Jonathan, you and I are fairly savvy computer users. When we have a problem,
speak for yourself.
when we have a problem, when we run into something on one of our systems that we're like, oh, I need to do this thing and I don't have the functionality for it, we go and we find the software that we need to do that. Right. And we're pretty good at probably vetting those things, making sure we're downloading something that's good. But a lot of free and open use stuff is built under this kind of model. It has add-ons. It has little things that you can check off, like check the box and say yes. And I'll admit, on my own personal PC before, I've been caught by like downloading something and then realizing that I accidentally left a box checked during the install that grabbed like a free antivirus trial from McAfee. And I was like, God dang, come on. I don't want that. Like, so it's really important to be keeping a tab on what your users are grabbing, what they're installing, whether you're allowing them to game on their work computer or not, to pay attention to, hey, what types of things are we opening ourselves up to? And as we've mentioned in the past, really understanding what is inside the programs that you yourself are allowing to operate in your environment, right? What's that bill of goods? What pieces were put inside the software to build what you made?
Software bill of materials, drink, cloud. All right. So, this can be related to a lot of different areas, right? This is based off of a community-driven marketplace. And that applies in a lot of areas. We have seen a number of malicious apps make their way through both the Apple and Android stores, third-party marketplaces, and even stories that we've ran about websites massing themselves as the official provider, simply to push their wares, right? And in this case, it seems like somebody was just more or less messing around and trying to see how far they can get. But I don't doubt that the discovery of these abilities and the exploits used that were released back in 2021, are definitely going to be out there. Definitely, people are going to start thinking about it, chatting about it. This isn't going to be the last of the sort, right? There's a lot of games, like you mentioned, that are modular. There's a lot of applications that are modular, and so this is just one of the consequences of that kind of community-driven marketplace that doesn't do any kind of really thorough security checks.
Yep. It is notable, though, as we wrap up this story, that a version of the game has already been pushed that patches out this version of JavaScript. So if you do have people on Bring Your Own Devices and you see that they're playing Dota on that in their spare time, if they've kept it up to date, they're fine. This is no longer applicable to you. But I'm sorry to wrap that one up so quickly, because
no, you're okay.
We got
we
two
gotta
more
keep
stories.
moving.
Got to keep moving. The show must go on. This one is actually really fun. New piece of malware that is out there called Beep has been popping up. I pulled this story in for us because as I was crawling around looking for news. I saw this on like at least 3 or 4 sites, just popping up. It was getting written up everywhere. But this new malware called Beep that has been released, has been found in the wild, is showing some pretty sophisticated levels and layers of evasion techniques have been built into this thing. But as the story that we've pulled from SC Media points out, it also has some really weird mistakes that are left inside it that make it really easy to find. So Jonathan, you were trying to kind of like deep dive into this one.
I was trying to break this down a little bit here. And so what's going on is, first off, we'll start with the name Beep, which is very interesting. But all right, I'm going to date myself here, but did you know computers have speakers in them? Not like the external speakers, but like a little, we call it PC beep speaker.
As a
little post beep. And so there is, of course, an API to trigger all kinds of beeps, and that's kind of where this name comes from because of the use of it. But more specifically, this particular piece of malware, it does a lot when it comes to trying to hide itself. It's very clever in the sense that it will do, first off, anti-debug, which for those listeners online, basically a debugger is a tool to help analyze an active running program and kind of watch and step through what's going on in a very simplistic definition. And the program can determine if there is a tool analyzing it. So it'll become inert. Same thing, it'll determine whether or not it's in a sandbox, right? Or like a VM, some kind of virtualized environment, rather than running on a bare system itself. And so a couple of these are examples of techniques that were found by within this malware to be stealthy, to hide itself. And it goes further, right? You mentioned what we were talking before the show about like a language check. Can you determine the language of the system so know where in the world I am to maybe not run in maybe a friendly country? Or in this case, the article calls out that you want to check for Russian is one of the languages, so accidentally run in a Russian place, like as in don't hurt my own developers. Theorizing. So there's a number of really interesting, tricky techniques that the malware developer has baked into it. But you mentioned it's not all so easy and simple and clean, right? They left some evidence too.
Yeah, and just to kind of loop back really quickly on what this thing specifically is before we go into that is that researchers who were looking at this found multiple versions that all appeared to be very similar sample files that were uploaded to VirusTotal, but they were all as DLLs, as GIFs, as JPEGs. Some of the stuff that we saw about this Beep malware was that it was being spread through things like phishing campaigns, pretty standard practices, right? But that it looks like it's operating as a dropper. But they couldn't retrieve the files that it appears to be trying to drop once it loads. They couldn't find those on VirusTotal. But it goes through all of these kind of, some of them fairly standard, but still kind of sophisticated, some of them robust kind of obfuscation techniques in order to operate. But it also makes these like very strange mistakes as it's doing it. Like it's creating registry keys and operating by creating process hollowing or using process hollowing to take a well-known process, a trusted process, gut it and then insert itself into it to operate so it can try and evade detection. But it's also doing stuff like leaving really obvious DLLs like big.dll. Like this is the kind of like very simple mistake that makes something like this really easy for someone to detect, right? Like a file called big.dll just doesn't belong on the system. That's standard, right?
It belongs in Sex and the City. And I just wanted to make mention. So you mentioned about how multiple samples were uploaded to VirusTotal, and I want to remind our viewers that a 3-letter file extension does not define the purpose of a file. It's its magic bytes.
Right.
So there's your lesson for the day.
Jonathan's words of wisdom: 3-letter extensions don't define purpose.
Yeah, it's all about the magic bytes.
But yeah, it's and especially what was the one that we were just talking about a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the one that's the image format. My brain's not pulling it. The image format that allows code to be inside.
Oh, SVGs. Yeah, scalable vector graphics. Yeah.
Yep. SVG. Yeah, that the purpose of an SVG is to be a very specific file for image extensions and for like working within art programs and stuff like that. Also allows for a lot of stuff to happen behind the scenes. But yeah, this one it seems very strange that it takes all of these efforts and these steps to try and evade detection, and then does some very obvious things. And so the researchers who were looking at this were saying perhaps it's a bait and switch, right? It's doing all of these clever things to avoid detection, but then kind of like letting you see this one big thing. So you are like, oh, I feel good. I have found the malware. I've caught it. But then it's a bait and switch. It's doing something else in the background. Or perhaps it was released early and it wasn't supposed to be out in the wild yet. So things like big.dll would have been replaced in the official version. Either way, it's something to keep an eye on for this one.
Yeah, and one of the main focuses here is that this is being spread via stuff like email and malicious and documents and stuff like that. And so, right, always the moral of the story, and I know we say this every week, but you got to be very vigilant on what kind of emails you're receiving, what kind of attachments you're receiving, what kind of messaging you're receiving, your kind of documents you're receiving, because as we saw, maybe we're not doing Word docs and Excel docs anymore. Now we're doing OneNotes. And so it's constantly
which if we had been
growing.
able to get our recording out last week, you
would
have
the OneNote story.
Yeah, it was the OneNote story.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Why don't you round us out with a little bit of good news?
Let's hit some good news. This one is coming to us from Bleeping Computer. We've decided recently that we want to do this. We always want to end, if we can, on a good note. So the good guys win. Spain and the US have partnered up over the last, I forget, was it like a year or so, to be tracking down this Madrid-based phishing gang that had totaled up over $5 million is in the headline. I think it's euros
euros.
It's euros is the actual amount, but over 5 million euros had been stolen from individuals and North American companies through these phishing campaigns. And so the Spain National Police and the U.S. Secret Service rounded up a bunch of high-level individuals within these gangs, hitting them with charges like committing financial fraud, and then basically what this organization was doing was they maintained like hundreds of bank accounts across various Spanish banks. They would deposit their money into that, then withdraw the cash from the ATMs, send it to other international accounts, or convert it to cryptocurrency. Like they were really trying to cover their tracks on where this money actually was. But they've arrested 8 people in Spain, 1 in Miami, and they seized luxury items valued at over 200,000 euros and froze assets worth 500,000 euros. So there's a bit of there's a bit of a big gap between the amount that they stole and the amount that we're recovering here, 700,000 euros to 5 million euros. But this is just a nice win to see. You love seeing when the good guys can get in there and take something.
It was a big operation, right? False identities were used to open up hundreds of bank accounts where stolen bank credentials that were via email and SMS from North American companies. They would liquidate their account into this other one. They would perform a transfer. And like you said, they would then pull the money out, put it into another account, and they'd try to wash and launder these things as quickly as possible and buy items of value that could then be resold and washed again. And it was definitely a big operation to catch everybody and put them behind bars. And I commend the teams and their efforts.
Yeah, I wish that there was a little more detail in the story on like how I always love reading the gritty details about like, well, we found this thing and that led us to this, and then we jumped over here to this thing. But there's a good chance that this is probably still an ongoing an active investigation in case. But that brings us to the top of the hour. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and you being here. If you've watched this on demand, thank you so much for your time. Go ahead and you can still leave a comment. We'll still see those. If you liked what you saw, please, I wish I could say leave a review, but it's not like we're on iTunes or anything like that. But if you like what you saw, let us know. If you didn't like what you saw, it's your opinion and no one cares. But until next week, same time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, I have been and will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I am Jonathan Singer. Thank you for joining us on GPS Live for the week of February 17th, 2023.
All right. We will see you next week, folks.